hello, hello, and more hello. So, today we have a new question. I've heard this a lot lately. In fact, the US government even brought it up in their new HHS reports. So, I figured today we have to talk about rapid onset gender dysphoria. So, uh, this is this is usually what they're suggesting when they talk about uh, transgender social contagion. The idea, which is not supported but still exists, is that adolescents identify as transgender and experience gender dysphoria due to peer influence or some sort of social contagion. And usually, for whatever reason, uh, they say it is more of a thing for trans men than trans women. So, yeah. Uh, People assigned female at birth usually are who they're specifically talking about with this, but uh, in the HHS report and in some other places, they use it universally, but the original reports focused more on trans men, or trans boys would probably be the best way to put them. Uh, as as stated here, it is not recognized as a valid mental health diagnosis. So, if you're looking for support in your wild fantasies, this is not the video for you. Because I'm actually going to look at the science here. And I'm starting with Wikipedia only because they make a very concise case talking about it. So, starting with the Wikipedia is the easiest way to start this. In fact, if you just go on to Google and ask it about rapid onset gender dysphoria, Wikipedia is the first place they tell you, followed by Scientific America, where they tell you it's utter crap as well. Then it gets disturbing because a parent group that believes in that is the third entry. I would not suggest going anywhere near that. Uh, Psychology Today also has a really bad article. That is the fourth one. They try to play impartial, but they are very much like, this is an actual thing. And there's a reason for that, mostly that some of the people in charge uh, politically support the idea. But yeah, there's more. You can find a bunch of stuff that supposedly supports it and undercuts it. However, I'm gonna start by saying it's not a real thing, and there's a there's a pretty good reason to say that. There's actually a coalition for the advancement and application of psychological science that put out a position statement on the idea. And they basically say it's not a thing. And all these organizations were part of that. They all signed on to this. Now, some get a lot of hate from gender critical groups like WPATH, which is what most like endocrinologists will use as like their basis for hormone treatments. So they tend to object to that organization. Uh, it it's been around a long time though, and they're actually very conservative with their recommendations. Uh, I have a I've actually read the medical guidelines from WPATH, and they're very conservative. So yeah, yeah. Uh, it's actually misunderstood that there's some radical fringe group. They're actually a very conservative organization that most people say does not go far enough. But to get back to the point, I explained that it's not really a real thing, but let's look at the history and why I consider it part of the culture wars phenomena. So, uh, most of this goes back to a woman whose name is Lisa Littman. You probably cannot see my highlight very well. For me, it's fairly big, but for you, you probably can't see it. Anyways, she supposedly studied transgender healthcare and gender dysphoria and noticed a few teenagers in the same friend group who started identifying as trans around the same time. And I'll get to in a second why that's a thing. But she decides to do a study on it. So, in 2016, she posted to 3 anti-transgender blogs where parents of transgender teenagers came together and asked them to fill out a survey, and then came up with a theory of a sudden or rapid development of gender dysphoria. And she actually got it published in a couple of places. It's been very much denounced at this point. There was a lot of debate pretty much immediately, but it's been pretty thoroughly denounced. The methodology, she basically got 256 parents to make responses to an online survey. And it was entirely web-based. There was nothing besides the survey. She didn't talk to any trans kids, especially the kids that these parents had to confirm anything. But the parents were basically asked to answer questions about the friend group uh, that their kids were part of and how sudden the appearance of gender dysphoria was. I'm going to jump over to some actual numbers. This is from the Journal of Pediatrics. And this is the figure that they're going to have here. But they did a very lengthy study on the concept using the time that someone knew or had thoughts of gender dysphoria before they got help, with the number of years along the bottom. I would actually be somewhere off this chart by double, because when I was younger, I didn't get any help. But this is the proportion, which suggests that most trans kids know for 3 years before they actually tell anyone and seek help. It's about 25% that were in the survey, and I think there's quite a large number that they looked at. I can't say for sure because I do not see it right off the top. It should be actually somewhere near the top, but yeah. Um, the very bulk of people know somewhere between 1 to 5 years, or even 1 to 6, I guess, depending on how much you want to consider to be the majority. Uh, and it pretty much trails off after that point because it falls basically by half. And the not yet a year crowd is very small. Mostly because, so really briefly, I'm going to get into sort of the why. To actually come out and seek help, you have to have an environment conducive to doing that. So, most people don't have a social situation where they feel they can come out immediately. That's why those who come out immediately is under 2%. So, not a very large number. Uh, most are going to fall into that 1 to 6 year category because it's going to take them a while to work up to getting to that point. Personally, the first time I tried to come out to my parents uh, was about 4 years after I had an idea. Uh, I didn't have the terminology of being transgender at the time, but I tried to seek help for like doing something about my gender dysphoria because I've had it a very long time, around 4 years after I started feeling it. So that 4 year mark for me. Though for me, nothing happened. I never got help. So it just kept extending from that point on. But yeah, it took me about 4 years to get up the courage to like even try to talk about it. And even today, my mom does not quite understand that, like, the way I felt is not a normal thing. So, but yeah, actually, can I make this bigger? Yeah, yeah. Here's the numbers for you. So, years along the bottom, percentage or weighted proportion, as they label it, along the height. So, the basis for this whole thing, and the reason it started, as I said, is that she noticed a trend where a lot of people from the same friend group would come out as trans. So, we notice things in ourselves that are different from others. And if we can find people that are also different in those same ways, we're going to gravitate towards them. I mean, I did not have anyone around me like at all. Uh, my little rural area did not have like any LGBTQ community. I knew no gay people. I knew no bisexual people. I knew no lesbians, let alone trans, which I hadn't even heard about at the age of like, well, teenage. So obviously, I had no community like that. But if you have friends who are also trans, it's a lot easier to come out and talk about actually being trans. You have an understanding of what is going on and people you identify with. So you're more likely to come out, which is why you see clusters of people like that. I've heard of several cases. Like, uh, I forget who it is, but there's a trans writer that I've read several blog posts from, and they talk about how their D&D group started out as four like cis guys, and by like 5 years on, there were three trans women and one cis guy. So yeah, yeah. If you can get a friends group that has other people that are like you in it, you're more likely to identify because you're going to see in yourself things that they talk about or go through. So it's a lot easier for you to do the same thing. Also, you have someone who's already been through the process, and then it's easier for you to then begin that process. Actually, that might even be part of why there's that 0 years group. Because if you've seen two different friends of yours go through the same thing, and then you realize, wait, I'm just like them, you don't need years at that point to talk about it. You're like, yeah, I'm just like them. So it's very easy to come out like that. And some of the stuff that supposedly supports this idea, and I don't have a good chart for it. Let me see if I can find. I'm looking for. I think usually I see it as a percent. Oh, like this one. Uh, no, I want the chart. Darn you. Yeah. Oh, well, no, that kind of took me off. So, this isn't the only one of these I've seen, but uh, I've seen some very similar charts to this one, which is why I picked this one from the list, because it is very like some data I've already seen. Uh, Basically, it has age groups, or, well, usually the ones I see are by generation. This one's by age group, but that basically correlates to generation. Very similar numbers. Uh, so, uh, this is all transgender adults, which is around 1.6% of the population, with more being non binary than binary, which means trans women and trans men are all in 0.6%. And you see much higher percentages among younger people and a lot less for older generations. And even less for even older generations. And I'm I'm still in this middle group, but man, I'm edging closer to this group, and that's worrying. So, the reason you see it a lot more in a younger generation than the older ones is going to be twofold. Uh, in my generation, first of all, a lot of us are either in like deep denial. We've had to live our lives for so long playing a role that doesn't fit, that we don't necessarily identify as trans. The older you get, the harder it becomes to change that narrative. I mean, I have times where I get thoughts that, like, I'm fooling myself. I know that's not the case, but those are nagging thoughts. You know, you've been this way so long, why not just keep doing it? I mean, that's pretty much a gender critical talking point. It is so much a thing. And it lives rent free in my head. I know that would have just hurt me more, but it is so hard to actually, like, come out and be yourself after pretending for so long. So that was one reason why it took me so long, because I've been actively wrestling with, like, the thought of coming out as trans and transitioning for like a decade at this point. It took me basically 10 years to accept it, because the older you get, the harder it becomes to just be yourself. The thought of being accepted for being yourself is also much harder at that point. So that is one reason. The other reason, and I'm going to be brutally honest, and YouTube is not going to like this very much, but a lot of us just unalived ourselves before getting to this point. I mean, I seriously came pretty close myself. A lot of us who don't get help just don't make it to be in like our 30s or 40s. That's the brutal honesty. When you don't get to be yourself back here as like a teen or a 20-year-old, the pain that you go through is just so intense that you are quite likely to have ended things before you ever get to be my age. That's just the honest way it is. So, most likely, the actual number of transgender people when I was born was about the same rough 5%. But there was just no support or understanding or ability to be ourselves. So, for the most part, very few of us ended up coming out. And by the time you're 50, I mean, my mental health has been, or had at least been, deteriorating pretty steadily. So, making it past 50 probably would have been very difficult. So you put those two things together, and yes, this is how it looks. The older you get, the less of us there are. Because really, we are probably about 5% of the population based on results like this. Most of us never detransition, never go back to our birth genders. Uh, you see this in study after study. People who would transition, especially as teens, don't go back. You'll find, like, out of, I think one study was like 1,700 people, they found 10 who detransitioned for some reason. So, if you don't get to be yourself, obviously the numbers aren't going to be like that. But realistically, probably about 5% of the population are trans. And as you see, most of those are non binary. But those of us who are not binary, I mean, the numbers are brutal. You go from those below 30 at 2% to 0.3%. That suggests basically 1 out of every 10 of us is all that makes it through. So, out of every 10 of us that are trans and binary trans, 1 of us will make it to the age of 30. That's the brutal math. And now, things like relationships make coming out harder too. Uh, I know a lot of people that realize they're trans in like their 30s or 40s. They've been suppressing it for a long time. Heck, I know someone who's a grandparent, and it was really hard for them to come out as trans because not only do they have adult children, but grandchildren who know them as they were. And like, they've spent usually usually they're married obviously because they have grandkids and, adult children, but very few of those relationships like continue. Uh especially among the older population, my age, older. You've known your partner for, you know, 20, 30 years, depending. They might not be accepting. And then what? You get divorced at, oh, I don't know, 56? That that can be an ordeal. It's another reason why there just aren't as many of us. It's hard to be ourselves at that point. And the 50 plus range is the first time that the numbers actually flip. And there's more binary people by that point than non binary. Every other group, more non binary people, universally. So, and now the numbers are going to be rough. Uh, obviously, this is the total all told. And usually there's more younger people than older people, but the numbers as percentages suggest not. So I'd need to look at more raw numbers to give you a better idea and be able to graph it myself. I know there's other charts. I mean, yeah, like, yeah, not good. This is not based on, this is based on like identification. And this one seems to be age based, with the red, pink, and blue lines being teens and 20s. Yeah, this one is like 13 to 15. This one is 16 to 17. And this one is 18 to 29. All the others, including all age groups, which is this dark purple, is uh is all much lower. And this is for the UK. I'm sure I can find better numbers if I look harder. Obviously, I didn't have this chart available to go immediately when I was making this, but it still gets the point across. The numbers aren't so much about like that. the number of people who are trans has changed. It's the people who are out have changed. Those of us who have passed away, those of us who don't come out, aren't in those charts. In fact, I've never been in a survey to talk about being trans. So I'm not even factored into these. At least not yet. So, and statistics for the US are probably going to be broken from this point on. It's very clear the administration right now has zero interest in any numbers. They don't believe transgender people are a thing. As much as they make a fuss over us, they have said repeatedly that we are not a thing. They don't keep statistics about us. They dumped all of this, all the studies, all the medical research, all of that got dumped. They made an HHS report based on years old findings, and it mostly stuff from radical gender critical people and groups. They pulled heavily from UK sources, and even those sources can't actually bend the truth enough to make it so that we're not a real thing. So, yeah, they came to some radical conclusions, and one day maybe I'll step you through the report. Uh, I did actually look at an overview that Aaron Reed did on the HHS report. And yeah, it was definitely full of lies. She calls out a lot of the bigger ones. I've seen others do similar things. It's a bunch of politically derived conjectures. So I might do a video on that sometime. I have enough science background to be able to talk about this topic. I mean, one of the things that's very much true for trans people is that we need to know about our own healthcare, because right now, and even historically, uh, we can't trust our experts, our medical doctors, to actually understand our healthcare as well as we need to know it ourselves. So, I've done a lot of research on the topic in the last 7-ish months at this point. I have been diving usually every day into more research, as much as you can even find research, uh, because no one wants to really fund it, but that's for another day. So, I think we've covered why gender onset dysphoria, yes, rapid onset gender dysphoria is a non thing, and how it got started. Uh, a lot of politically oriented people, usually gender critical people, love the idea that it's some sort of contagion. But I think I pretty well laid out the more realistic base to why some of the things they note are actually things. If you have more questions on the topic, ask below. I hope you like this. Uh, I like covering the topic. So, well, not this topic. Doing reading on some of the negative, background to this was very upsetting. But if you have questions on transgender topics, please let me know below. If you've liked it, please like. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. So, with that, hope you have fun. Hope you take care. And I hope I see you later. Bye.